Static keyword. Properties and methods of a class can be declared as static using the static keyword. Static members of a class are independent of any particular object derived from that class. How to create a static property? We can create static properties by adding the static keyword just before the property name. And how to access a static property? Now, to access a static property, we write the class name followed by double colons followed by property name, preceded by a dollar symbol. Just like that. So, why we need a static property? Static properties are useful when we need a single copy of the property for all objects. So, non-static properties lives in objects and static properties lives in class. Now, what's that? Non-static properties lives in objects and static properties lives in class. To explain it, let's consider our student class example again. Here we have two non-static properties, name and ID. Either public or private, I will call them non-static. Now, we need to count how many student objects are created. Here we need such a property whose value is same for all objects. It means only one copy of that property for all objects. Now here comes the static property. So we define a static property student count in a student class and initialize it with 0. So what happens when a new student is created? PHP creates a new copy of all non-static properties and save them in a newly created object. So all students have their own copy of name and ID. But static properties live in the class. So all student objects will be using single copy of this count property. After creating 7 student object, this count value will be 7. Now let's see this static property in action. We have declared the static property count in student class and we are initializing it with 0. Now in constructor, we are incrementing this property by 1. So whenever a new student object will be created, constructor will be called and this count will be incremented. Note one thing here. This represents the current object of the class. And as we discussed, static properties lives in class. So we can't access a static property using this keyword. PHP gives us self keyword to access static properties inside the class. Self represents the class itself. So the syntax is self, double colon, dollar sign, then the static property name. Now first we are printing this student count. You can see that we haven't created the object of the student class yet. You can access static properties outside of the class by just using the class name. You don't need to create the object of that class. Syntax is class name, double colon, dollar sign, then the property name. But one thing, this will only be possible if a static property is public. If it is private and protected, then rule will be same, that you can't access it outside the class. And here we are creating 10 student objects and at last again we are printing the student count. Let's see its count is right or not. And first its value is 0 and after creating 10 objects its value is 10.